Your future is not controlled by your past, your environment, or the opinions of others. It is controlled by the decisions you make consistently. Most people give their power away by believing life just happens to them, but nothing significant ever changes until a decision is made. A real decision is not a wish or a preference. It is a line drawn in the sand. When you decide, your behavior must follow. Circumstances don't change first, commitment does. The moment you decide to take responsibility, you shift from being a victim of conditions to becoming the architect of outcomes. Many people confuse motion with progress. They stay busy, but they never decide where they're actually going. Without a clear decision, effort becomes wasted energy. Life rewards clarity, not confusion. When you decide, you give your mind a target. Your focus sharpens, distractions lose their grip, and opportunities that were always present suddenly become visible. Decision creates direction, and direction eliminates hesitation. The reason so many people feel stuck is not because they lack ability, but because they refuse to decide who they are becoming and what they are no longer available for. A decision is powerful because it forces alignment. Your habits, your schedule, and your priorities eventually rearrange themselves around what you decide is important. You cannot drift into a better future. You must choose it. Every meaningful change in history began with someone deciding that the current situation was no longer acceptable. The world doesn't respond to complaints, it responds to commitment. Once a decision is made, excuses lose their authority. You stop negotiating with weakness and start acting from conviction rather than emotion. Your circumstances may explain where you are, but they do not excuse where you stay. Many people wait for conditions to improve before they decide to move forward, but conditions improve because someone decided to act in spite of them. Decision precedes evidence. You won't feel ready when you decide. Readiness is created through action. Confidence is not a prerequisite for decision. It is a byproduct of honoring your word to yourself. Every time you decide and follow through, you build internal trust, and that trust becomes momentum. The quality of your decisions determines the quality of your life. Small decisions repeated daily quietly shape your future more than dramatic moments ever will. What you tolerate, what you avoid, and what you prioritize are all decisions, whether conscious or unconscious. Indecision is still a decision, and it always votes for staying the same. When you fail to decide intentionally, you allow habits, fear, and other people to decide for you. Ownership of your future begins the moment you decide to choose deliberately rather than drift passively. Decision demands sacrifice because choosing one path requires letting go of another. You cannot move forward while keeping every option open. Growth requires closure. Many people delay deciding because they fear loss, but the greatest loss comes from never choosing at all. Every year spent undecided is a year spent reinforcing the same patterns. When you decide, you may lose comfort, approval, or familiarity, but you gain clarity, direction, and self-respect. The pain of discipline lasts moments. The pain of regret lasts decades. Your environment will test your decision. Doubt will challenge it. Resistance will try to negotiate with it. This is not a sign that your decision is wrong. It is proof that it is real. Decisions that matter attract opposition. If nothing pushes back, nothing is changing. Staying committed when emotions fluctuate is what separates intention from transformation. You don't reaffirm your decision when it's easy. You reaffirm it when quitting would be convenient. Consistency under pressure turns decisions into identities. When you decide time begins working for you instead of against you, your daily actions start compounding in a single direction. Even imperfect action moves you closer when the direction is clear. Momentum is created by alignment, not perfection. You stop asking if something will work and start asking how to make it work. That shift alone changes your results. Your future doesn't require permission, approval, or perfect timing. It requires a decision that you honor repeatedly, regardless of mood, circumstance, or delay. Your life will never rise above the level of your thinking, because thinking is the root system of every result you experience. Before anything shows up in your actions, it first shows up in your mind. The way you interpret situations, evaluate opportunities, and talk to yourself determines what you believe is possible. If your thinking is limited, your behavior will be cautious. If your thinking is fearful, your decisions will be defensive. External change without internal change is temporary, but internal change inevitably produces external results over time through consistent action aligned with upgraded beliefs. Many people try to change their life by changing their environment while keeping the same thought patterns. They move cities, switch jobs, or enter new relationships, yet carry the same mindset everywhere they go. The result is familiar outcomes in unfamiliar places. Your thinking acts like a thermostat, always pulling your life back to a set level. Until the thermostat is adjusted, progress cannot be sustained. True growth begins when you question assumptions you've never challenged and recognize that many limits you accepted were inherited, not chosen. Your thoughts debt. Determine what you notice and what you ignore. Two people can face the same opportunity and see completely different things based on how they think. One sees risk, the other sees potential. One sees inconvenience, the other sees leverage. Thinking controls perception, and perception controls response. This is why opportunity is invisible to people who are not prepared to recognize it. When your thinking expands, your awareness expands with it. You begin to see options where you once saw obstacles and solutions where you once saw problems. The most dangerous thoughts are the ones that feel normal but quietly sabotage progress. Thoughts like this is just how things are, or people like me don't do that, or now is not the right time. These thoughts are not facts. They are habits. Repeated long enough, they become invisible boundaries around your potential. You don't break through these limits with motivation alone, but by deliberately replacing automatic thoughts with intentional ones that support growth, responsibility, and possibility. Upgrading your thinking requires intentional input. What you consume mentally becomes the raw material for your beliefs. Conversations, media, and environments all program your expectations. If you consistently feed your mind limitations, scarcity, and fear, your thinking will reflect that diet. Expansion requires exposure to higher level ideas, disciplined reflection, and silence to process what matters. Thinking well is a skill, not a talent. It must be practiced daily through learning, questioning, and choosing responses instead of reacting emotionally. Your thinking shapes your standards, and your standards shape your behavior. You don't rise to what you hope for, you fall to what you tolerate. When your thinking improves, your tolerance for excuses decreases. You begin to demand more from yourself, not out of pressure, but out of clarity. You stop negotiating with distractions and start protecting your focus. Improved thinking simplifies decisions because it aligns them with long-term outcomes rather than short-term comfort. Most limitations are not physical or external. They are mental agreements you've unknowingly signed. The moment you challenge those agreements, new behaviors become available to you. You begin attempting things you once dismissed, speaking up where you once stayed silent, and acting where you once waited. Thinking is the permission slip you give yourself before action ever occurs. Without that permission, even the best opportunities go unused because belief always precedes behavior. When your thinking changes, patience increases because you understand process. You stop expecting instant results and start respecting compound growth. This removes desperation and replaces it with consistency. You act with confidence, not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because your thinking is grounded in responsibility rather than hope. Progress becomes predictable when thinking is disciplined. The future does not respond to wishful thinking, but it always responds to clear, elevated, and intentional thought patterns applied daily through action. Identity shapes income long before money ever shows up. What you earn is a reflection of who you believe you are, not just what you do. Behavior flows naturally from identity, and income is the downstream result of repeated behavior. If you see yourself as someone who survives, you will make survival decisions. If you see yourself as someone who creates value, you will seek opportunities to multiply that value. You never outperform your self-image for long. Even when success comes accidentally, identity will either sustain it or sabotage it back to familiar levels. Many people chase income without addressing identity, and that creates internal conflict. They want higher results but still see themselves as unqualified, undeserving, or temporary winners. This inner mismatch creates self-sabotage through procrastination, inconsistency, or fear of visibility. Your identity acts like an internal gatekeeper, deciding how much responsibility, growth, and reward you feel comfortable holding. Until your identity expands, Increased income feels unsafe. Real transformation happens when you change the story you tell yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, and what you're allowed to have. Identity is built through decisions you repeatedly honor. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your self-image strengthens. Every time you break one, it weakens. You don't become confident by affirmations alone. You become confident by evidence. That evidence comes from disciplined actions performed even when motivation is low. Over time, these actions rewrite your identity. You stop saying you are trying and start knowing you are becoming. Income grows naturally when your identity aligns with responsibility, value creation, and long-term thinking rather than short-term relief. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. Goals are external targets, but identity is internal permission. You may set ambitious goals, but if your identity is rooted in scarcity or fear, your actions will quietly undermine them. Identity determines how you respond to setbacks, criticism, and uncertainty. Someone with a strong identity sees obstacles as feedback, while someone with a fragile identity sees them as proof to quit. The difference is not talent, but self-concept reinforced through intentional growth. Identity also determines how you price yourself, position yourself, and present yourself to the world. If you see yourself as replaceable, you will accept less. If you see yourself as valuable, you will protect your standards. Income follows perceived value, and perceived value begins internally. The world often mirrors back the way you see yourself. When you change your identity, your posture changes, your communication changes, and your expectations change. People respond differently, not because you demanded more, but because you believed more first. Becoming precedes earning. The skills you develop, the knowledge you pursue, and the discipline you practice are all identity-driven. People who identify as learners keep growing. People who identify as leaders seek responsibility. People who identify as builders think in systems instead of tasks. Income increases when your identity shifts from consumer to producer, from employee mindset to ownership mindset, from effort-based thinking to value-based thinking. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but it compounds through intentional daily alignment between who you are becoming and how you act. Your environment reinforces identity, either positively or negative. Ely. Surroundings that normalize mediocrity make growth feel unnecessary, while environments that normalize excellence make growth inevitable. Identity is shaped by what you tolerate, who you listen to, and what you repeatedly expose yourself to. If your environment contradicts the identity you are trying to build, progress will feel exhausting. Alignment between identity and environment reduces friction and increases momentum. You don't need everyone to understand your growth, but you do need spaces that support it. When identity changes, income becomes a byproduct rather than a pursuit. You stop chasing money and start attracting opportunity through competence, confidence, and clarity. You act from intention instead of desperation. This removes emotional pressure from outcomes and replaces it with consistent execution. You no longer ask what will pay quickly, but what will build you into someone capable of earning sustainably. Income grows when identity stabilizes at a higher level, because behavior, decisions, and standards naturally rise to match who you believe you are. Results are not a personal attack, and they are not a final verdict on your worth. They are information. Every outcome you experience is feedback responding to your actions, decisions, and systems. When something does not work, it is not proof that you are incapable. It is proof that the method needs adjustment. Failure only becomes permanent when you attach identity to it. Progress accelerates when you detach emotion from results and analyze them objectively. Feedback is neutral, but interpretation determines whether it becomes fuel for growth or justification for quitting. Most people fear feedback because they confuse it with judgment. They see a poor result and immediately turn inward with self-criticism rather than outward with curiosity. This emotional reaction blocks learning. When you view results as data, you remain flexible and responsive instead of defensive. You begin asking better questions. What worked? What didn't? What can be improved? This mindset transforms setbacks into strategy sessions. Growth belongs to those who are willing to learn faster than they fail, because learning converts mistakes into leverage rather than shame. Feedback reveals the gap between intention and execution. You may want success, but results reveal how aligned your actions truly are with that desire. This awareness is empowering because it gives you control. You cannot control outcomes directly, but you can control inputs. Results expose which habits need reinforcement and which ones need elimination. Without feedback, improvement becomes guesswork. With feedback, progress becomes measurable. The willingness to face results honestly separates people who improve consistently from those who repeat the same year indefinitely. Failure only feels final when reflection is absent. When reflection is present, every setback becomes temporary. You don't lose when something goes wrong. Why? Oh, lose when you stop adjusting. Many breakthroughs happen shortly after multiple failed attempts, not because luck changed, but because insight accumulated. Each attempt refines timing, approach, and understanding. Feedback shortens the learning curve when you respect it. Avoiding feedback may protect the ego temporarily, but it delays the growth required for long-term success. Your emotional maturity determines how well you use feedback. If you need constant validation, feedback will feel threatening. If you value growth, feedback will feel valuable. Detachment allows improvement. You can acknowledge disappointment without letting it define you. This balance builds resilience. Resilient people don't experience fewer failures. They recover faster and extract lessons more efficiently. They understand that discomfort is part of progress and that feedback is the language improvement speaks through results rather than feelings. Feedback also reveals patterns over time. One result may be an anomaly, but repeated results indicate a system. Systems, not intentions, produce consistent outcomes. When you recognize patterns, you gain the power to redesign processes rather than relying on motivation. This shift moves you from reactive effort to strategic adjustment. You stop working harder and start working smarter. Feedback shows you where leverage exists and where energy is being wasted. Awareness precedes optimization. Many people quit at the point where feedback is most valuable. Early results are often messy because learning is still occurring. Those who persist through this phase gain insight that late quitters never access. Feedback rewards patience and punishes avoidance. The sooner you embrace it, the faster progress becomes predictable. Growth is not linear, but feedback makes it navigable. It gives you a compass when the path feels unclear, allowing you to stay oriented even when outcomes fluctuate. When feedback becomes your teacher, fear loses its power. You no longer avoid action to protect self-image. You act, observe, adjust, and repeat. This cycle builds momentum. Results stop feeling personal and start feeling practical. Improvement becomes inevitable when you treat every outcome as guidance rather than judgment. This mindset frees you from perfectionism and anchors you in progress, allowing consistent action to replace hesitation and learning to replace self-doubt. Comfort feels safe in the moment, but it quietly charges interest over time. Every time you choose ease over effort, you postpone growth and compound limitation. Comfort keeps routines familiar and expectations low, making stagnation feel normal. It disguises itself as rest, patience, or practicality, but underneath it resists change. The cost of comfort is invisible at first, which is why it is so seductive. You don't notice the price until years pass and potential remains unused. Discipline, by contrast, demands payment up front, but it produces freedom later through PR. Ogress. Discipline is not punishment, it is structure that supports your future self. It removes the daily burden of decision-making by creating standards you follow regardless of mood. When discipline is present, you don't rely on motivation, which is inconsistent and emotional. You rely on systems. This consistency builds trust within yourself. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. That identity shift alone creates confidence. Discipline simplifies life by narrowing choices to those aligned with long-term goals rather than short-term comfort or impulse. Comfort encourages avoidance. Discipline encourages engagement. When something feels uncomfortable, comfort says delay, escape, or distract. Discipline says address, learn, and act. Growth lives on the other side of discomfort, which is why avoiding it delays progress. Discipline trains you to tolerate short-term unease in exchange for long-term gain. This tolerance expands capacity. Tasks that once felt heavy become manageable. Over time, what was once uncomfortable becomes routine, and what was once routine becomes effortless through repeated disciplined action. The price of comfort is paid in missed opportunities. Opportunities rarely arrive at convenient times. They require preparation, effort, and often discomfort. Those who live comfortably are rarely ready when opportunity appears. Discipline prepares you in advance. It sharpens skills, builds habits, and strengthens focus before the moment of demand arrives. This readiness creates advantage. While others hesitate, disciplined individuals move. While others negotiate with fear, disciplined individuals execute. The gap between potential and performance closes through consistent discipline, not occasional inspiration. Discipline also protects you from emotional decision-making. Comfort-based choices are reactive, driven by how you feel in the moment. Discipline anchors decisions in values and long-term vision. This creates stability. You don't swing wildly between extremes of effort and rest. Instead, you maintain steady progress. Emotional highs and lows lose control over your actions. This steadiness compounds results quietly. Small, disciplined actions, repeated daily, outperform intense but inconsistent bursts of effort, fueled by temporary motivation. Many people believe discipline limits freedom, but the opposite is true. Discipline creates options. Financial discipline creates choice. Time discipline creates availability. Health discipline creates energy. Without discipline, freedom shrinks as consequences accumulate. Comfort feels free initially, but it leads to dependency, regret, and constraint. Discipline feels restrictive at first, but it expands capacity. The freedom to choose your schedule, your work, and your direction is earned through disciplined habits practiced long before the results are visible. Discipline requires honesty. It forces you to confront excuses, distractions, and self-imposed limits. C. Comfort allows rationalization. Discipline demands accountability. This accountability strengthens character. You stop blaming circumstances and start evaluating actions. Responsibility replaces justification. This shift is empowering because it returns control to you. When discipline becomes part of your identity, progress no longer depends on external pressure. You act because it aligns with who you are becoming, not because someone is watching. Over time, discipline changes what you consider normal. Waking early, focusing deeply, practicing skills, and delaying gratification become part of your baseline. Comfort loses its grip because growth feels more satisfying than ease. You begin to enjoy effort because it produces results you can measure. The rewards of discipline are cumulative and self-reinforcing. Each discipline choice strengthens the next one, creating momentum that comfort can never produce and results that comfort will never justify. Action is the bridge between intention and reality. Without action, clarity remains theoretical and confidence stays imagined. Many people wait until they feel completely ready before they move. But readiness is not a feeling, it is a result of movement. Action creates feedback, and feedback sharpens clarity. The more you act, the more you understand what works and what doesn't. Hesitation keeps possibilities abstract, while action turns ideas into experience. Experience builds certainty. This is why consistent action, even in more powerful than endless planning. Clarity often follows action, not the other way around. When you move, details reveal themselves. Problems that seem complex simplify once you engage with them directly. Action eliminates overthinking by replacing speculation with evidence. Each step forward answers questions that thinking alone cannot. Momentum grows when you commit to movement instead of waiting for perfect conditions. This momentum builds confidence organically because progress becomes visible. You begin trusting yourself not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because you prove your willingness to show up and adjust. Confidence is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act despite it. Fear loses power when it is confronted repeatedly through action. Avoidance strengthens fear while engagement weakens it. Every time you take action in the presence of uncertainty, you expand your tolerance for discomfort. This expansion increases capability. What once felt intimidating becomes manageable. Action trains the nervous system to remain steady under pressure. Over time, confidence becomes a byproduct of familiarity created through repeated exposure to challenge. Action compounds in the same way interest does. Small actions taken consistently create results disproportionate to their size. Most people underestimate the power of daily effort because the early returns are minimal. However, compound action rewards patience. Each action builds on the last, creating exponential progress. Inconsistency breaks this chain, forcing you to restart repeatedly. Consistent action creates continuity, which allows learning, skill, and efficiency to accumulate. The difference between average and exceptional outcomes is rarely intensity. It is consistency applied over time. Taking action clarifies priorities. When you act, you discover what truly matters and what is merely noise. Busy work fades and meaningful effort becomes obvious. Action exposes distractions by contrasting them with results. This awareness sharpens focus. You stop reacting to everything and start responding to what aligns with your direction. Action simplifies decision-making because results provide guidance. You learn faster what to continue, what to refine, and what to abandon. Progress accelerates when energy is directed by evidence rather than opinion. Action also builds credibility both internally and externally. Internally, it builds self-respect because you see yourself following through. Externally, it builds trust because people respond to demonstrated effort, not intention. Words inspire temporarily, but action influences consistently. Opportunities gravitate toward those see who move because movement signals commitment. Even imperfect action communicates seriousness. This creates alignment between intention and perception, reducing friction in collaboration, leadership, and growth. Action speaks in a language results understand. Many people confuse preparation with progress. Preparation feels productive, but without action, it becomes avoidance disguised as responsibility. Action tests preparation. It reveals gaps that study alone cannot uncover. Learning becomes more efficient when paired with application. Mistakes made in action are more valuable than theories perfected in isolation. Each mistake narrows the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Action transforms knowledge into skill and skill into capability through repetition. Ultimately, action is the force that turns possibility into reality. Ideas remain dormant without it. Dreams stay distant without movement. Action creates momentum, and momentum reshapes identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who executes, not just envisions. This self-perception reinforces further action, creating a cycle of growth. Waiting delays life, but action engages it. Every step taken strengthens clarity, confidence, and capacity, making forward movement the natural response to opportunity rather than hesitation.